Welcome to the Boat Buyer Secret Weapons series. I am your host, Captain Matt. Today, we're getting into the battle of saltwater boaters versus freshwater boaters. Who's got it better? Who are better boaters? Let's talk about it. Let's start with skills. In the saltwater environment, there are a lot more opportunities for bad things to happen. There's a lot more skills needed. You got to deal with tides and currents, the water levels going up and down, the currents kind of changing with the tides. It's not like you're boating on a river and that current is always going the same direction and it's pretty consistent within a certain outing. Depending on where you're boating on the coast, in the saltwater environment, you definitely have more challenges there. Next, we come to navigation. The freshwater boaters out there on most lakes and waterways are not on navigable waterways that have cans and nuns and markers and channel markers. When you're dealing with the coastal environment, you have to understand all of the channel markers. Even in some of the smaller vessels, you still have to understand where you can go, where you cannot go, because bad things can and will happen like this. This is a little bit bigger boat, but it is common for people to run aground, to run in some shallow, and to cause some damage to their vessel or at least have an embarrassing moment. Now, freshwater boaters, I consider myself a freshwater boater. It's not all just ease and fun and games there. You've got to worry about stumps. There are some shallow lakes and waterways. I love this picture of the three propeller blades chunked into a stump. When the water level was up just a little bit more, that stump was still submerged, and thunk thunk thunk, and they're gone just like that. It happens. My brother knocked a lower unit off by going a little bit too deep into a cove, water skiing, and boom, there went the lower unit. That ended a fun boating day. Well, we are brought to you by the Boat Buyer Secret Weapon. You can check out our new U.S. Boat Expo at usboatexpo.com. Check out the over 100 of videos that we have, the podcast, the website with all sorts of articles and fun boating information. Now, the other thing you have to think about is the challenge of boating is the weather. The weather can come up on a lake, on a river, but when you're on the coast and that weather comes up, it can come up quick. And if you are 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 miles offshore, you had better pay attention to the weather. You had better know how to read a radar. You had better know how to check weather forecasts and make sure that you don't get caught in something like this when you're offshore and it's unexpected. If there's a small craft advisory, you had better be aware of it. Know how to get that information and know how to take precautions so you're not caught in a bad situation. Now, when it comes to maintenance, saltwater boaters, they've got a little bit tougher there as well. These are some damage caused by saltwater. So stern drives in saltwater, not a big fan, especially if you leave them in the water. The corrosion that salt water causes is just really, really nasty stuff. Also, because if you don't have closed cooling, which means you have antifreeze like your car, and you've got a freshwater cooling system, you're actually pulling that salt water up and into your engine, and your manifolds and risers will need to be replaced about every 5, 6, 7 years or so, depending on how well you flush it. And even if you flush it, it needs to be done on those stern drives because it just sort of can sit in there and you can't get it all out. Now, these other two pictures that you'll see, those are actually internal components from a outboard. Those are Yamaha components, and this engine was flushed for a couple of minutes after a run. I think this is like 7 years in is when these pictures came from, but because they didn't use the proper flush out procedure, getting that engine up to temperature, you can see almost that the salt in there and the corrosion and the debris, just the gross, the chipping off the, I think that's the cylinder head. It just it is bad news. It is rough on these engines. It's rough on the boats, and you've got to take that extra maintenance in. So, to me, that's a check in the column of freshwater. It doesn't take as much maintenance, and then you have the trailers. If you're dunking your trailer in the saltwater environment, that corrosion can happen on all of your leaf springs, your torsion bar. If you've got a torsion axle. The brakes are quick to go in the saltwater environment. And I've even had a saltwater guy in freshwater that he wouldn't dip anything lower. He wouldn't get his hubs wet. So he would crank it on a dry trailer, and he even wanted to do it in freshwater, even though he didn't quite understand that there's a significant difference. So you've got to, not only do you have to flush the internal components, wash the boat when you're in the saltwater environment, you got to do the same thing with your trailer and get all of the nooks and crannies. Now, let's talk a little bit about fishing. They're two different worlds. I think this sums it up best, that you're going to catch a nice big bass, but when you're fishing offshore, when you're fishing in some salt, you can get some huge fish. Now, of course, you've got big giant catfish and things like that, but the variety, the colorfulness, the excitement of fishing in saltwater, I personally think that saltwater wins there. I'm not a big fisherman. I would love to hear what you fishermen have to say and fisherwomen have to say about freshwater and saltwater fishing. Maybe that's a full video right there. Now, let's talk about beauty in nature. This is one of the things that I love about boating, is just getting out into the nature and seeing just all of the natural beauty out there. This is Lake Jocassee in South Carolina. They've got some beautiful waterfalls, nice clean water, and it's just a gorgeous place to go. They've got maybe 15, 16, 17 waterfalls that you can check out there. It's just a gorgeous environment and a beautiful place on a lot of the lakes in the U.S. The sunsets are just incredible. For me, sunsets on the water is one of the best times to be out there. I'm particularly not a sunrise kind of guy, but give me a sunset and I am a happy man on a lake. Again, we got the U.S. Boat Expo if you want to check that out. But what about the wildlife and the nature? Well, in the freshwater, my girls can't get enough of feeding the ducks, especially if there's a couple baby ducks. They will sit there and feed them all day long, and they can't get enough. But in my opinion, it is tough to beat having some dolphin jumping off the bow of your boat. Even at 40-some years old, cruising down the intercoastal and having those dolphin just playing off the bow of your boat and almost interacting with you while you're in the boat, they're in the water. It is tough to beat, and I would give the saltwater environment the win just on that alone. And you add the manatee and the other wildlife you get to see. It is an exciting environment, and then you add the beauty of all of the vessels that you get to see. We ran from Charleston down to Hilton Head one weekend and did a full day trip of it, and then another day trip back and spent the night down in Hilton Head. And you pulled into the Hilton Head Marina, and we had a 26-foot deck boat that we were running. Nice big boat in the area that I came from on a freshwater lake, and you'd go down there, and we moored in the marina next to, I think it was the 12th largest yacht in the U.S. This thing was massive, and it was awesome to run. You're running down the intercoastal, and you've got these huge yachts that are running the same water in the same marinas. It's just a cool environment. If you've never done it, it is amazing. You're in a 26-footer, and you pull up next to a 100-foot super yacht, and it is incredible. Now, let's talk about the ease of access. We talked about kind of the navigation and the skill required, but what about the landings and the boat ramps and getting in and out of the water? Well, On the freshwater lake, it's pretty simple. You may have a little bit of wind to deal with. Maybe there's a little bit of current in the lake if it's a dammed up river, but it's pretty simple. You got traditionally nice big boat ramps and pretty easy access. You get into the rivers, and now you've got a little bit more current to work with. There's some current rushing down, depending on how that ramp is cut in at an angle with the current. That adds a little bit of challenge to it, and not quite as easy, but still not too bad compared to putting in sometimes an environment like this where you've just got, what is that, half a dozen or more ramps, people coming in and out from everywhere, and you're opening up potentially to the open ocean. You've got the wind coming in, you've got the tides, and you've got the currents, you've got the wakes, you got other boaters. The ease of getting out in some of these areas is a little bit challenging. And then you look at something like Haulover Inlet. If you've not watched a Haulover Inlet video, I encourage you to, after you finish watching this and smash that like button, go check out those Haulover boat videos. And some of these guys just get beaten up trying to get through that inlet out to the sandbars and where they want to go out of Miami. And it is one of the roughest inlets that you'll want to run in, or maybe not want to run in. But again, the level of skill, the ease of getting out there, it's not every day. It's not like that every day, but it is a challenging environment compared to this. In the freshwater, hey, we throw the lines off and we go, and it's like glass out there. Maybe there's a little bit of boat traffic. Even the choppiest day on a big lake. Now I'm gonna throw in the Great Lakes. If you're out on Lake Michigan, hey, there's some tough areas there. But for the most part on the inland lakes, excluding the Great Lakes, it's pretty simple to get out there. Now, what about cost? There's a big difference in cost on saltwater boating and freshwater boating. The dry stack, if you're fortunate enough to have a dry stack in a freshwater lake, they're not as common because there's not as much boating activity. The lakes may not be as big, but the cost is typically going to be about half in a lot of the freshwater environments for boat storage. The maintenance technicians, hey, they're more plentiful, but there's a lot more work that needs to be done on a saltwater boat to keep it in good working order. You've got to change that impeller a little bit more often. You've got to pull your prop and get all that fishing line off so you're not ruining a seal. You've got to flush your engine and use the salt away and things like that. And you've got to keep on top of all of that stuff. And I guarantee you're going to have more repairs on a similarly taken care of outboard from saltwater to freshwater. It's just a harsher environment. It's harsher on everything, and tends to be the technicians are a little bit more expensive when it comes to their hourly rate, in addition to just having to do more work in general, maintenance and repairs. Now, insurance, another thing that can add up. The saltwater coastal environment, hey, there's a lot more obstructions. There's a lot more nasty things that can happen. So your insurance is going to be a little bit more expensive. And if you're in hurricane zone, well, it's going to be that much more expensive. And potentially you're going to have to worry about a haul out plan. If there's a hurricane coming, what's your plan of attack when that rolls around? So the bottom line, saltwater or freshwater, who wins? Hey, my opinion is I love freshwater. I would love to hear your opinion, what you love about the saltwater environment, what you love about the freshwater environment, what you hate about the saltwater environment or the freshwater environment. For me, one of the things about the saltwater environment I don't like is the salt water. I hate that taste and the feel on my skin. I can't get it washed off soon enough. But freshwater, I'll jump in any lake. You may say it's nasty and gross, but I'll take freshwater personally every day. Remember, if you're looking to buy a boat, grab that Boat Buyers Toolkit. It's free at boatbuyerssecretweapon.com/toolkit. If you enjoyed the video, if you're thinking about buying a boat, subscribe to the channel. Hit that like button if you enjoyed this. Leave me a comment. Let me know what your thoughts are. And YouTube has recommended a few videos here for you. Thanks a lot, and we'll catch you soon. Remember, life truly is better on a boat.